Orders, Captain.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the season finale of Strange New Worlds, Hegemony.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you both better grab onto something.
Look, I know we haven't been covering Strange New Worlds for the entire season, but I love this show. It just takes a lot of time to cover a Star Trek show. We wanted to make sure we had the time to do it right. So we are here for the finale to point out these Easter eggs for you. There have been some huge moments this season, like the epic crossover between Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds.
Okay, next month for movie night, I'm programming an Endorian comedy.
Or that fantastic musical episode.
It's happening again. Why are we singing?
But instead, I'm going to talk about the most important thing in all of Star Trek canon, the Gorn identity. First off, the episode is called Hegemony, which is a reference to the governing body of the Gorn, a government called the Gorn Hegemony. Now, in canon, this name was not established in dialogue until the Enterprise episode Bound.
This is from a planet in the Gorn Hegemony.
The Gorn.
The less said about them, the better.
But it had existed in non-canon books for a while, even going all the way back to the 1979 role-playing game Starfleet Battles. We open with a captain's log for the USS Cayuga, Captain Batel's ship, which takes its name from the 3 real-life US Navy ships all named in honor of the Cayuga native peoples. Batel tells us that the people of Parnassus B have made their colony in the vein of an old Midwestern United States town. Now, the idea that human colonies out in space would replicate old-timey Earth settings goes back to the original series. Back then, Gene Roddenberry wanted many of the strange new worlds of Star Trek to actually seem familiar and populated with people that we could relate to. He called this the parallel Earths theory in both the writer's guides and pitch documents. And it certainly saved some money on sets for those old scientists. Later in the episode, Pike orders everyone to take shelter in the barbershop, which could be a reference to this old-timey barbershop from the TOS classic City on the Edge of Forever. Nurse Chapel has hitched a ride with the Cayuga crew on her way to a fellowship that will find her studying archaeological medicine. Batel asks Chapel,
Dr. Corby doesn't mind you arriving a little.
This references the original series character Dr. Corby, who will eventually become Christine Chapel's fiancé before vanishing and then resurfacing in the episode What Are Little Girls Made Of, in which he reveals that he's become a robot version of himself and is adept at making robot clones of people, including Captain Kirk.
Well, there's one difference between us. I'm hungry. The difference is your weakness, Captain, not mine.
Corby studies medicine from the distant past, which in the TOS will end up meaning ancient robot bodies like Ruck.
You've convinced me that you're dangerous.
But in Strange New Worlds, this field of study does not involve robot bodies yet, and Chapel has been into this field of study for a while, as was mentioned in episode 5 this season, and in the episode right before this one, Subspace Rhapsody, she sang about this.
Sky is the limit, my future is infinite.
Batel and Pike also reference this episode in a cute little Zoom call, in which they say,
Not bursting into song every 10 minutes, so that's minor.
but then Batel and Pike's chat gets cut short, and Batel says,
Doug? You're having issues with comms? Mine just...
When Pike loses contact with Batel, he touches his Mariner's Keystone, which was a gift from Batel in the episode Among the Lotus Eaters, which was its own massive Easter egg heavy episode in which Pike and the Enterprise actually returned to their very first Strange New World, Rigel 7.
I hadn't thought about that since the good old days when we thought our comms were compromised back on Rigel 6.
7.
But back in the Strange New Worlds era, Rigel 7 looked more like this.
Hurry! It's deserted. There'll be weapons and perhaps food.
Back on Parnassus B, Doug and Batel see a shuttle crashing, and Batel wonders if it's a shuttle from the Cayuga. It turns out later in the episode that the shuttle crash was not one of theirs at all. Instead, this early shuttle crash is later revealed to be an Easter egg in the form of SCOTTY.
Montgomery Scott at your service.
When Pike and the Enterprise landing party find Scotty on Parnassus B later in the episode, he explains that he fled the Gorn in a shuttle after his ship, the Stardiver, was attacked by the Gorn.
Montgomery Scott at your service. Lieutenant, junior grade.
Scotty is played here for the first time by actor Martin Quinn, making a debut surprise appearance in Strange New Worlds. This is also now, retroactively, the earliest chronological appearance of Scotty in the Prime timeline, prior to the second pilot episode where no man has gone before. But before all that can happen, the Enterprise has to roll up on the wreckage of the Cayuga at Parnassus B, which is very reminiscent of several episodes of TOS, in which the Enterprise would begin the episode by discovering a wrecked or messed up sister ship of the Enterprise, most notably in the Doomsday Machine when they found the wrecked USS Constellation, or when the Tholian Web began by finding the USS Defiant phasing out of reality.
I guess that explains why we never heard of that ship in TOS. I wonder if there's anything else in this episode that will explain weird TOS canon, like what happened with the Gorn Tales.
What?
Yeah, do the Gorn like lose their tails and then regrow new ones like real lizards, or do like the tails grow a whole new Gorn?
No, that is not how Gorn reproduce at all.
That's how your mom reproduces.
Good one, high five. Spock notes that whatever the Gorn have done negates all scans, communications, and transports, which, in a way, is exactly like what the Romulans had in the 2009 Star Trek reboot, in which they used a massive drill to blow up Vulcan, which is why Kirk, Sulu, and Engineer Olsen in that timeline had to skydive into the planet. Pike and the gang taking a shuttle to the planet isn't exactly the same thing, but the principle is the same. Interestingly, both plot lines in which the villains have a scanner/transporter blocking device also involve the origin story of Scotty. In this case, we find Scotty on the planet, having crashed ahead of time. But in Star Trek 2009, the need for Scotty became apparent after the previous engineer was burned by a giant energy beam.
Olsen is gone, so.
When the landing party sees Gorn running around all Jurassic Park style, Leanne notes that they should be fighting for dominance, not working together. Pike says that there might be something about the Gorn that we've yet to discover, and hopes that he can find some way to reach them. Now this foreshadows the classic TOS moment at the end of the arena where Kirk refuses to kill the Gorn.
No, I won't kill you. Maybe you thought you were protecting yourself.
Hey, how come the Gorn basically look like xenomorphs in Strange New Worlds, but it was some guy in a rubber lizard suit in TOS?
Well, while that's never been explained on screen, it has been noted that several quasi-canonical sources have indicated that Gorns with tails do exist. In the James Blish novelization of Arena, published in 1968, Kirk fights a Gorn with a tail. That is a lot more agile than the one that we saw on screen. Plus, in the Enterprise Mirror Universe episodes, in A Mirror Darkly, Archer fights a Gorn on the Defiant that has a tail. The current Star Trek role-playing game, Star Trek Adventures, indicated in 2018 that there are at least 2 subspecies of Gorn, which accounts for the ones with the tails in both Strange New Worlds and Enterprise, and the ones without the tails in TOS and elsewhere. And we have to mention that this entire sequence of cat and mouse with the Gorn on a claustrophobic ship seems like Strange New Worlds is doing an homage to Ridley Scott's Alien. And by the way, Doug, speaking of Gorn tails, the coolest sequence in this episode is hands down Spock and Chapel's zero-gravity fight against the Gorn in the wrecked hull of the Cayuga. Spock taking a spacesuit to save the day is reminiscent of his famous spacewalk in the motion picture. The scene also feels a bit like Picard and Worf fighting the Borg in zero gravity in First Contact.
Assimilate this.
In this scene, we see a Gorn trying to input a command code, which is not something this cliffhanger episode actually explains, meaning that's a mystery for Season 3.
It looks like we have a real mystery on our hands.
But within this scene, we get a really deep cut to the animated series. When Spock and Chapel are fighting this big Gorn, Spock launches himself off the wall to get into a better fighting position. Now this is a direct reference to the 1974 animated series episode The Jihad, in which Kirk and Spock have to prevent a holy war by fighting a bird alien in zero gravity.
How long since you worked out in null-gravity combat exercises?
Last week, with you, Captain.
God, I love Star Trek. Eventually, Spock grabs a broken piece of space junk and just smacks the Gorn in the face, breaking its space helmet. This is a bit like Kirk grabbing a random pipe to beat up Khan in Space Seed.
I have 5 times your strength.
As Spock and Chapel escape, we see the saucer section of the Cayuga crash into the planet below. Obviously, this is a sideways reference to the saucer of the Enterprise decrashing in Generations, but also, in a sense, a reference to Star Trek Beyond, when that version of the classic Enterprise had its saucer crash into a planet. Once the Gorn's transporter blocking field is down, everyone can be beamed up safely, and here the episode does a smart foreshadowing Easter egg. When Dr. Mbega, Sam Kirk, and Ortegas and Leanne get beamed up with all the other colonists, the transporter beam is not the Starfleet version of that effect. Now, at first, you might think that maybe it's just a mass beam up effect, but later Spock tells us that the residual transporter signals are non-Starfleet.
Oh no, does that mean half the cast is gonna get Gornified?
It certainly looks that way. If only they had someone who was really good at beaming people up.
Like Chief O'Brien?
No, dude, Scotty.
Oh yes, sir. Snotty beamed me twice last night. It was wonderful.
Along with Pike and Battelle, Scotty arrives on the Enterprise, and it is here that we learn that Carol Kane's Pelia, the current chief engineer of the Enterprise, is the one who first gave him that nickname.
Hello, Scotty.
The episode ends with Pike faced with an impossible choice. As Spock says,
the colonists in the landing party appear to have been beamed up by the Gorn.
Which basically means that half the cast of Strange New Worlds has been captured. Meanwhile, Starfleet has ordered Pike to get the Enterprise out of there. Clearly, this is the best of both worlds, but for the Strange New Worlds generation. Will Pike save the rest of the crew? Will Scotty take over for Pelia and save everyone? Or will the Enterprise get trashed again?
Laddie, don't you think you should rephrase that.
Season 3 of Strange New Worlds has not started filming yet, but we know the Enterprise will return. But at this point, we just don't know how. Well, guys, that's our thoughts on the episode. What did you think? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.